Today I'm going to tell you a heartwarming story about a powerful millionaire who, unfortunately, is infertile and cannot have children. However, he decides to adopt the child of a homeless woman, and what happens next is truly breathtaking. To discover all the details of this beautiful story, watch the full video. But before you do, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. So without further ado, let's get to the story. John was the most powerful and lonely man in the city, owner of a fortune that could buy anything except the thing he desired most, a family. After years of painful attempts and treatments, John discovered he couldn't have children. Disheartened and with a broken heart, he made an unexpected decision to adopt a child. During one of his rounds in the city, fate intervened on a rainy night. John encountered Hope, a young homeless woman holding a baby in her arms and struggling to protect him from the storm. Their eyes met for a brief but intense moment, enough for him to feel something inexplicable. He didn't know why, but there was something about that woman that awakened a deep and mysterious feeling in his heart. Why, he wondered with a shattered heart, why does love always have to be so difficult? Thus began an unexpected journey full of twists and surprises. John watched the city from his luxurious office window, lost in his thoughts. He had everything anyone could desire, but the weight of loneliness and the pain of not being able to have children haunted him day and night. That immense fortune, the mansions, the luxury cars, nothing filled the emptiness he felt in his heart. One afternoon, determined to give his life a new direction, John gathered his lawyers and expressed his desire to adopt a child. The men looked at him surprised, but none dared to question him. "It's what I need," he said in a grave tone, trying to convince himself that this would make him happy. In the following weeks, John met several children in institutions, but for some reason, none of them awakened the connection in his heart that he so yearned for. He began to wonder if he was really making the right decision, or if that emptiness he felt would never be filled. On a particularly lonely night, John went out for a walk aimlessly, as if looking for an answer in the tranquility of the night. It was then, when turning a corner, he saw a young woman sitting on the sidewalk, holding a baby in her arms, and protecting him from the rain that was beginning to fall. John approached without understanding what drew him to her. Hope's eyes, full of tenderness and determination, looked at him for a brief moment, but intensely enough for him to feel something inexplicable. Without saying a word, John felt that something had changed. John watched the young woman intrigued. Even in the harsh conditions she was in, Hope exuded a dignity that caught his attention. The baby in her arms was wrapped in a worn blanket, but his eyes shone with a tenderness that only a mother could show. Without realizing it, John knelt beside her with a mix of compassion and curiosity. "What are you doing here in the middle of the night, and in these conditions?" he asked, unable to hide the tone of concern in his voice. Hope looked at him cautiously, like someone who has suffered too much and doubts whether to trust. "Just protecting my child," she murmured, avoiding his gaze. There was a pain in her eyes. Silent in his words, there was a strength in John that he couldn't ignore. On impulse, he took off his coat and offered it to cover the baby. "Let me help you," he said sincerely, feeling something ignite within him. For a brief moment, it was as if he had found the purpose he had long been searching for. Hope hesitated but accepted the gesture, pulling the blanket to better wrap her child. As they conversed, John felt that something special was happening. He had crossed paths with so many people, but none had awakened such an immediate connection. It was as if fate had placed them there, under that rain, so they could both find something missing in their lives. As they parted ways, John let slip, "I want to see you here again tomorrow. I want to help your child." Hope looked at him, confused but with a glimmer of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. She didn't know if she could trust him, but something in his eyes said he was sincere. The next morning, John was anxious, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. As he approached the meeting spot, his heart raced faster than he wanted to admit. There, in the middle of the city's bustling crowd, stood Hope, holding her child in her arms and looking around with an expression of both caution and hope. Seeing him, she gave a timid smile that deeply touched John. That morning, John accompanied Hope and her child to a nearby cafe. There, he listened to fragments of her story between whispers and pauses. She came from a humble family, and despite the difficulties, she always fought for a dignified life. When she lost everything and was left with no one, she vowed to protect her child above all else. "It's an unconditional love," Hope murmured, caressing the baby's tiny hand, and John felt a lump in his throat. During the conversation, John began to feel something new. He, who always had control over every situation, now found himself completely vulnerable before this simple woman, but one of incomparable strength. "Why do you make me feel this way?" he wondered, not understanding what drew him so strongly to her, a woman who had nothing to do with his world. As he observed her, John noticed details that would escape anyone else. The way she caressed the baby's head, the brightness in her eyes when talking about her child, the sweetness in every gesture. Each one of those things awakened in John a feeling of warmth and tenderness he had never experienced. Was he finally finding something that money couldn't buy? Suddenly, John realized that he didn't want to help her just out of compassion or to fill his own inner void. There was something more, something deep and unexpected. Without realizing it, his feelings for Hope were transforming, like a flame that began to burn silently, beyond his control. At the end of the meeting, John made a proposal. "Let me help you, not just for your child, but also for you." Hope remained silent, surprised by the offer, but unable to refuse it. With her heart divided between fear and hope, she accepted, not knowing she was beginning an improbable love destined to change their lives. In the days that followed, John dedicated himself to helping Hope and her child, providing them with temporary housing and ensuring their basic needs were met. Although she accepted the help, John noticed that Hope carried an invisible weight, a shadow that seemed to follow her silently. Whenever he tried to open up, she would look away as if she wanted to bury the past. Intrigued and wanting to truly know her, John began to discreetly investigate what had happened to Hope before they met. What he discovered left him speechless. Hope was the daughter of a simple but dignified family that had faced a series of financial and personal misfortunes. A chain of family debts had made her lose her home, and soon after her job. Everything she had built crumbled, and doors closed one after another. When confronting her, John didn't know how to approach the situation. "I know you've been through a lot and suffered things no one deserves, but I want to help you move forward," he said with a tenderness that surprised even himself. Hope remained silent, her face marked by pain, but her eyes showed a growing trust in John. She then decided to open her heart, recounting how she had lost everything and how her life had become a constant struggle to survive and protect her child. Each word carried a depth and suffering that moved John, making him question his own world of privileges. "I'm embarrassed to accept help," she confessed, tears in her eyes. But John took her hands and assured her that she was not alone. That moment of mutual vulnerability and trust brought them even closer. John, who once saw his fortune as a burden, now felt that he could use it to make a difference. Alongside Hope, he discovered a greater purpose, something that no amount of money or prestige could offer. And so, in that sincere exchange of secrets and pains, an invisible and powerful bond was established between them. John didn't know if it was love, but it was something so strong and real that it made him want to fight not just for her, but beside her. Both had a past marked by losses, but together, they might build a bright present. The companionship between John and Hope intensified each day. He spent more time with her and little Andy, helping with daily tasks and sharing simple, quiet moments that held deep meaning for both of them. Although neither of them said it out loud, a complicity grew between them, as if they were silently building a love together. One afternoon, while watching Andy play in the garden, John realized that he couldn't remember the last time he had felt so at peace. "It's been a long time since I felt something like this," he murmured, almost to himself. Hope hearing him. Hope looked away, feeling her heart race. She also sensed the closeness, but was afraid of the feelings that were beginning to blossom inside her. In the following days, the small gestures between them gained new dimensions. When John helped her carry something heavy, their hands would brush lightly, causing both of them to shiver. While preparing coffee, Hope always left a cup ready for him, and John would smile, feeling cared for in a way he had never experienced before. These were simple actions but filled with meaning, like a subtle dance between fear and desire. John, for his part, began to question what he really desired. He had approached her out of compassion, but now he knew his feelings went beyond that. However, the fear of giving in prevented him from confessing what he truly felt. Why does love have to be so difficult? He thought, frustrated with his own doubts and hesitations. That night, after putting Andy to bed, Hope and John found themselves alone in the living room. The silence between them was comfortable, almost intimate, but at the same time, it was charged with a tension that seemed about to burst. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, they both felt they could confess what was hidden in their hearts. But insecurity was stronger, and they remained silent. Although they said nothing, it was clear that something was growing between them, a pure and profound feeling that was strengthening in each other's presence. A love that, though undeclared, began to shine intensely in their hearts, binding them in an invisible and irresistible way. John, used to the strength his position demanded, had never shown his vulnerabilities to anyone. However, each day with Hope allowed him to lower his defenses, revealing aspects of himself that he had hidden even from his own family. To his surprise, she seemed to understand him without judgment and listened with a genuine empathy he had never felt before. One night, while Andy slept, John confessed the truth about his life to Hope. "It's easy to think that money is everything," he began, with a bitterness in his voice that surprised Hope. "But sometimes, wealth is just a golden prison, filled with loneliness and secrets that no one can see." As he spoke, Hope noticed the pain in his words and the weight he carried inside. Moved, she looked into his eyes and gently placed her hand over his. John continued, feeling a sense of relief he had never known. "All this time, I thought having everything meant being happy, but I've realized that true happiness comes from connections, from love. And with you, I found something I never thought I'd have. A purpose, a reason to care, a reason to hope." Hope squeezed his hand, her eyes filled with understanding. "John, you don't have to carry this burden alone. We'll face it together, whatever comes our way." And so, in that moment of mutual vulnerability and trust, they found solace in each other. The love that had been silently growing between them finally began to take shape, promising to change their lives forever. Material possessions don't fill the soul. I know you've suffered, and you're looking for something more than success. We all need something real, something that money can't buy. His words were simple, but carried a wisdom that deeply touched John. John's heart was beating faster. It was the first time someone saw him beyond his fortune and public image. With Hope, he felt he could be himself, vulnerable and human. "You make me feel things I don't understand," he admitted with a sincerity that revealed his fragility. He didn't know if it was love, but he was sure she had awakened something within him that he thought had been dormant for a long time. For the first time in a long while, John allowed himself to smile authentically. "Everything feels different," he said, without taking his eyes off Hope. She, without saying a word, gave a slight smile as if she perfectly understood what he was trying to express. The connection between them grew stronger, fueled by every conversation and every shared silence. By the end of the conversation, John realized that his life, full of luxuries and successes, had lacked meaning until now. With Hope by his side, he finally felt he had found a purpose, a sense that went beyond his position or fortune. He knew deep inside that this budding love, though improbable, might be the answer he had long sought. With each passing day, the connection between John and Hope deepened. Although neither of them spoke a word about it, it was as if an invisible bond united them without the need for explanations. Their glances, in particular, said more than 1,000 words. Each time their eyes met, they both felt they could see into the other's soul, discovering secrets and desires they had never confessed. One afternoon, while playing in the garden with Andy, a simple and happy moment, John and Hope exchanged a look that changed everything. It was an intense gaze, full of tenderness and something deeper, something neither of them dared to name. It was as if, in that brief instant, they acknowledged the feeling that had been growing between them for some time. John felt his defenses crumble, and an almost irresistible impulse led him to lean towards her. Their faces were so close that he could feel the softness of her breath, the warmth of her skin. It was the perfect moment, the instant when he could declare his love and break the barrier that separated them. But something stopped him. Perhaps the fear of rejection, or the uncertainty of not knowing if his feelings were reciprocated. Hope, for her part, felt equally trapped in that moment, both desiring and fearing it. Despite all she felt for John, the memory of her past and her current situation made her hesitate. She didn't want to risk the security he had provided, or compromise her child's well-being. Still, deep in her heart, she knew that this love, though silent, was growing with a strength that was becoming harder to ignore each day. The moment passed and both stepped back. Each kept the consuming feeling to themselves. From that day on, their glances became even more eloquent, as if each time their eyes met, a part of their souls was revealed to the other. However, neither dared to break the silence. That night, as John retired to his room, he couldn't stop thinking about that moment with Hope. What holds me back? He wondered, feeling a void that only she seemed capable of filling. He knew his feelings for her were real, neither a fantasy nor an illusion. It was something authentic and powerful, a love that seemed born to challenge all barriers. The bond between John and Hope did not go unnoticed by those around John. Rumors began to circulate in his social circle, generating disapproving looks and hurtful comments. For many, it was inconceivable that the powerful John Miller, one of the most influential and respected businessmen, could fall in love with a woman without resources and of humble origin. What does he see in her? They whispered, while others insinuated that Hope was only trying to take advantage of him. Hope, sensing the rejection in the looks of those around her, began to doubt her place in John's life. Every comment she heard, every gesture of disdain, reminded her how far she was from belonging to that world of luxury and power. The fear of being an obstacle in John's life and dragging him into a humiliating situation tormented her. She did not want to be the cause of his suffering or the target of criticism that could damage his reputation. One afternoon, while they were in the garden, Hope decided to confront her doubts. John, maybe we should stay apart. I don't belong in your world. People keep talking, and I don't want to be a burden to you, she said with a trembling voice, trying to hide the pain consuming her. John, hearing this, felt a mix of anger and sadness, his hands clenching into fists. Do you think I care what others think? He responded with a determined look and a voice full of emotion. All I want is to be with you and Andy. The opinion of others doesn't define what I feel for you. His words were a balm for Hope's soul, who felt her heart beat strongly for the first time. She felt truly loved and accepted for who she was, regardless of social barriers. However, the problems quickly intensified. One of John's sisters, a proud woman accustomed to controlling everything in the family, tried to intervene. John, this is unacceptable. Think about our reputation. This woman is not suitable for someone like you, she said with a cold and distant tone. John stood firm, making it clear that his feelings for Hope were sincere, and that no one would change his mind. That night, John and Hope once again faced the harsh reality of their love. They knew that if they wanted to be together, they would have to confront not only their insecurities, but also the judgment of those around them. But the love they felt was stronger than fear and shame. John took Hope's hands and, looking her straight in the eyes, promised that he would fight for her, no matter the consequences. As their relationship progressed, John felt there was much about Hope that he still did not know. Although she shared small details of her past, John sensed deeper secrets that tormented her. His intuition was not wrong. Hope carried a story of pain she had tried to bury, a wound that, though invisible, remained present in her daily life. One morning, while walking together in the park, Hope felt she could no longer hide it. She began to tell her story, whispering words laden with sadness and regret. I lost my family, my friends, everything I had. Everything fell apart, and before I knew it, I was alone on the streets, fighting every day to survive for me and Andy, she confessed, feeling the shame wash over her. John listened in silence, moved by Hope's honesty and the bravery she showed by opening her heart. He understood then the depth of her pain and the reason why she had been so hesitant to trust him. You've been through much more than I imagined, he said, gently taking her hand as if he wanted to convey all the strength she needed. Hope continued revealing the details of her downfall. The family debts, the betrayals by people she had trusted, and the desperation that had pushed her to the streets, where the only hope left was to offer her child a better life. John felt a lump in his throat, recognizing that the luxury and stability he had taken for granted were everything she had lost. Far from being deterred, John's feelings for Hope only intensified. He admired her strength, her resilience, and the determination that had allowed her to keep going even in the worst moments. What others might see as a liability, he considered a testament to her true value. With tears in his eyes, John took Hope into his arms. "You're not alone, and you'll never have to face this alone again," he whispered tenderly in her ear, making Hope feel at peace for the first time in a long while. She felt she finally had a refuge, a safe place where she could rest her heart and trust completely. That day marked a turning point in their relationship. Hope's secrets were no longer an obstacle. They became the foundation of a new connection, a deep and authentic love that did not depend on perfection or appearances. Both knew their lives had changed forever, and the improbable love they shared was destined to overcome any barrier. After Hope's revelation, John felt an urgent need to show her how important she was in his life. He, who had doubted his own feelings so many times, was now sure he wanted Hope by his side, not just as a friend or confidant, but as his partner. The connection between them was so strong that he couldn't imagine his life without her. One afternoon, while walking through the garden, John decided to express his feelings directly. He took Hope's hands and, with an intense and emotional look, said, "Hope, I don't want to keep hiding what I feel. I don't want you to be just a part of my life. I want you to be my whole life." His voice trembled slightly, and Hope could see the sincerity in his eyes. Hope felt her heart race, but a deep fear also invaded her. Although her feelings for John were real, she feared he only felt compassion for her, or that his proposal was driven by a desire to rescue her rather than genuine love. "John, I don't want you to see me as a responsibility or a act of charity," she murmured, looking away. "I want you to know that I am much more than the circumstances in which you found me." John, upon hearing her, understood her doubts and fears. He knew that the differences in their lives could make her question his intentions, but he was determined to prove that his feelings were genuine. "Hope, you don't have to worry. What I feel for you is not pity. I love you for who you are, for your strength, your kindness, and for how you give my life meaning," he assured her with a determination that dispelled Hope's doubts. Despite his words, Hope still felt divided between hope and fear. She knew that accepting John meant opening up to a world foreign to her, and facing the judgment and disapproval of many. However, deep in her heart, she longed to share her life with him, to give Andy a family, and finally to feel unreservedly loved. With her heart pounding, Hope nodded, accepting John's proposal. They looked at each other in silence, feeling they had taken a decisive step, one that united them not only through love, but also through the trust and courage both had shown. The promise of a future together filled them with hope, despite the adversities they would still have to face. That night, as they shared a simple but meaningful dinner, John and Hope felt more united than ever. They knew their relationship would still have to overcome great obstacles, but both were willing to face any risk, convinced that the love they shared was strong enough to overcome any barrier. The days following John's proposal were filled with happiness for both, but also with uncertainty. Hope still felt that there were issues from her past that could affect them. Although she had shared much of her story, she harbored a secret she feared to confess. She knew that to build a relationship based on trust, she had to face her fears and reveal the whole truth to John. One afternoon, while walking through the park with Andy, Hope decided to speak up. With a trembling voice and eyes full of uncertainty, she explained to John that there was a debt that followed her, a responsibility she had not managed to resolve. "John, before I met you, I made mistakes trying to move forward. I trusted the wrong people, and as a result, I ended up more indebted and desperate," she confessed with a mix of shame and fear. John listened in silence without judging her. Seeing the pain in her words, he realized that the burden she carried was much greater than he had imagined. Without hesitation, he took her hand and said firmly, "Hope, You are not the first nor the last person to have made mistakes. We all have pasts we would rather forget. I won't let that stand between us." The relief and gratitude Hope felt were immediate. But even so, the weight of her past did not disappear. She knew that to protect John and Andy, she had to resolve her outstanding issues, even if it meant distancing herself from them. However, John was not willing to let her face the struggle alone. "Let me help you. You don't have to do it alone," he insisted with a tenderness that melted Hope's last defenses. Finally, after much reflection, she accepted John's help. Together, they devised a plan to confront those who had wronged her and to resolve the debts that still tormented her. With John's influence and resources, John began to address the problems that had seemed unsolvable. With each step forward, Hope felt the burdens of her past lighten, and for the first time in a long while, she began to see a clear and shadowless future. With each obstacle they overcame together, their love grew stronger. John understood that Hope's past had made her the strong and resilient woman he so admired, and she felt that with him by her side, she could overcome any adversity. They had faced the shadows of the past together, and now their love shone with an intensity that challenged any doubts or fears. That night, as they watched Andy sleep, they realized they had not only left the past behind, but had also built a new life, one in which they could love each other without reservations or secrets. Both knew that from that moment on, their destinies would be intertwined forever. The relationship between John and Hope seemed to strengthen with each obstacle, but the problems were far from over. As their commitment became more apparent, those who opposed their relationship intensified their efforts to separate them. The society in which John moved was not willing to accept a woman of humble origin in their exclusive circle. The rumors and criticisms grew increasingly cruel. John's family, particularly his older sister, tried to convince him that ending the relationship was best for their reputation and family stability. "John, can't you see this woman is not at our level? You're compromising everything we've built," his sister said, a mix of anger and desperation in her voice. However, John remained firm. For the first time in his life, he was willing to fight for something that truly mattered to him, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, Hope faced a great trial as well. She knew John's love for her was sincere, but each time she heard the comments and saw the looks of disdain, her insecurity grew. She feared being a burden in John's life, the cause of his family conflicts and suffering. In her heart, she doubted whether their love could withstand all these external pressures. One night, after a tense dinner with some of John's relatives, Hope felt overwhelmed and decided to speak with him. "John, I don't want to be the reason for your unhappiness. Maybe it's better if I step away," she said with tears in her eyes and a shattered heart. But John, hearing her, couldn't contain his pain and took her into his arms. "Hope, you're the best thing that has ever happened to me. I won't let anything or anyone separate us," he whispered, his voice filled with love. Determination. Despite John's support, he realized he needed to do more to protect Hope and Andy. He decided to confront his family directly, making it clear that his life and happiness would not be dictated by anyone else's opinions. "If you truly care about me, you will have to accept Hope and Andy as part of my life," he stated with a firmness that surprised everyone. This act of courage and deep love astonished Hope, who understood that John's love was unwavering. Although doubts still assailed her, John's unconditional support gave her the strength to face any obstacle. She knew that being with him would not be easy, but she also knew she had found in him her life partner, someone who loved and respected her beyond social conventions. At that moment, both realized that their improbable love had been tested and had emerged stronger. John had faced his family and social circle, making it clear that his love for Hope and Andy was non-negotiable. However, this decision was not without consequences. Some of his business partners began to distance themselves, and his businesses experienced certain difficulties. For the first time, John realized that defending his love might cost him his fortune. But despite the adversities, John was determined to protect the woman he loved and the child he already considered his own. Meanwhile, Hope saw John's sacrifice, and although her heart was filled with love and gratitude, she also felt overwhelmed by a deep sense of guilt. She didn't want to be the reason John lost everything he had built. Her own love and Andy's protection were paramount, but she doubted whether her happiness was worth so much suffering for John. One afternoon, after receiving news that one of his main businesses was in crisis, John made a radical decision. He was willing to part with some of his assets and a life of luxury to live a simpler life with Hope and Andy, where peace and happiness would be their only riches. "I don't need a fortune to be happy. I only need you and Andy," he confessed to Hope, looking at her with a tenderness and certainty that moved her deeply. But before John could execute his plan, an old friend of his father, a man who had known John since childhood, approached him with an unexpected offer. He offered his financial support and the opportunity to redirect his business empire on one condition: that John never renounce the person he truly loved. "John, true wealth is in love and family. If she is your happiness, then she is your greatest treasure," he said, reminding him of what truly mattered in life. With renewed hope and the support of his friend, John reorganized his life and businesses, ensuring that his love for Hope and Andy would never again be in jeopardy. His final decision was unwavering, and together with Hope, they faced this new chapter of their lives, ready to build a life based on love and mutual respect. That night, as they both gazed at the stars from the balcony, John took Hope's hand and said, "Our last hope was this improbable love, and I will never regret fighting for you. You are, without a doubt, my most valuable treasure." With tears of happiness, Hope rested her head on John's shoulder, feeling for the first time in a long while that, despite all the challenges, she was in the place where she had always belonged. With the obstacles of the past overcome, and a new beginning ahead, John and Hope began to build their life together with more strength than ever. John reorganized his businesses to prioritize the time he spent with his new family, ensuring that nothing would come between them. By his side, Hope found a renewed purpose, supporting John and caring for Andy, offering him a stability that had once seemed impossible. John's family, which initially had shown resistance and disapproval, gradually began to accept Hope. His older sister, who had initially opposed the relationship firmly, couldn't help but notice the happiness that radiated from John whenever he was with Hope. Accepting Hope into the family was not immediate, but over time, the sincerity and strength of her love with John earned their respect. For his part, John discovered a peace he had never experienced before. His life, once devoted to business and prestige, now revolved around the moments he shared with Hope and Andy. Family dinners, walks in the park, and shared laughter filled their home with a joy that couldn't compare to any fortune. "I never thought that the simple things could be so perfect," he confessed to Hope one night as they watched Andy sleep. Despite the happiness that surrounded them, one last obstacle appeared on the horizon. An old business partner, resentful of John's withdrawal from certain ventures, tried to discredit his reputation and cause legal problems. John, aware of the impact this could have on his family, prepared to face it with serenity and the certainty that with Hope by his side, he could overcome any challenge. In the midst of this final storm, Hope remained by his side, demonstrating that their love was as unbreakable as they had imagined. "John, if we've come this far, we can handle this and much more. No matter what the world throws at us, as long as we're together," she said, with a firmness that reminded John of the incredible strength of the woman he loved. Finally, with the help of his loyal friends and the family that now supported them, John managed to overcome the conflict and clear his name. The process was tough, but it also served to show him and Hope that their love was a true source of redemption and strength. They had managed to build a family and overcome adversities, showing the world that true wealth was found in and mutual trust. That night as they celebrated their victory, John raised a glass alongside Hope and Andy. "We have found the peace we've always dreamed of," he said with a smile. Hope embraced him, and both knew that after all the trials and redemptions, they were ready to enjoy the life they had worked so hard to build. With the obstacles finally overcome, the lives of John, Hope, and Andy were filled with a peace none of them had ever known before. The family they had built together was strong, unbreakable, and based on love and understanding. John and Hope found each day a new reason to be grateful for the path that had united them. Although it initially seemed improbable, John, who once thought that money was his only security, now realized that his true wealth was the love of Hope and the innocent laughter of Andy. Every moment they shared together, every glance, and every gesture were reminders of what they had achieved and what they were willing to protect. Wealth, business, and prestige no longer held the top spot in their lives. Now their happiness was found in the simple and genuine. John's family, who had initially doubted their love, eventually accepted and respected Hope, admiring the strength and dignity that characterized her. Their former doubts and prejudices faded away, and gradually, they embraced her as part of the family. The union of John and Hope had proven that true love could overcome any barrier and defy any expectation. One day, while walking in the park, John stopped and, looking at Hope and Andy, realized that his life had reached a fulfillment he had never imagined. Taking Hope's hand, he said with a heart full of emotion, "Thank you for teaching me what true love is, for giving me this family and for being my home." Hope smiled, her eyes filled with tears of happiness, and at that moment, she knew that all the pain and difficulties had been worth it. That night, while having dinner together at home, Andy asked with his childlike curiosity, "Will we always be together?" John and Hope looked at each other, and with a smile full of promises, John replied, "Always, son. No matter what, we will always be together." And so, surrounded by love, hope, and the strength of a family built with sacrifice and bravery, they lived a life that everyone wished for, one where love, respect, and unity prevailed over any material wealth. The story of John and Hope shows us that true love can overcome any barrier, even the most unexpected ones. Coming from completely different worlds, they found the strength in their hearts to defy norms, face adversities, and build together a family based on respect, trust, and unconditional love. Their relationship reminds us that the value of a person is not measured by social status or wealth, but by the sincerity of their feelings and their willingness to fight for those they love. If this story moved you as much as it moved us, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to ensure you don't miss any of our upcoming exciting narratives. Share this story with someone special, and tell us in the comments what touched you the most about this improbable love. See you on the next adventure.